Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. We're going to do our 7th week of our new agent training. Today, we're going to cover the workflow and transaction management of real estate. So let me go ahead and just share this live feed with a couple of other people so we can have some other people join us. In one moment. How's everybody doing? Hopefully enjoying this decent weather we're having. Let's see.
No, el tema no. Tiene 4 cuartos. Tiene cuartos no. Sí, no, eso no tiene. El ático tiene, pero no es independiente. Es un cuarto arriba. Exacto. Entonces, yo tengo un frenado solo, a las 4. Entonces, no. Lo que puedo hacer es que puedo decir a la gente que si tú puedes llegar, si te gusta, me dice.
Okay, everyone. Hey, Carlos. Good morning. Derek, thank you for joining. Do we have a screen share?
No.
Yeah. Okay, good. Awesome. All right, perfect. Okay, guys, so today what we're going to go over is how to handle your transactions from the beginning to the end. And sorry for all the construction stuff you see in the background. Our office is currently under construction now. We're adding some more space. So if you guys are thinking of joining real estate as a real estate agent, we're making room for more people, or if you're thinking of come over from somewhere else, the time is now before this place gets crowded. I'm sure that by next year we'll definitely be reaching our goal of 100 agents. So if you guys are interested, please visit us at Culture Data State. So we'll go ahead and jump into our training for today. Okay, so you're a new agent or you're an agent who hasn't done many deals, and you're a little confused and you feel a little embarrassed about asking other people for a step-by-step process and how to go ahead and do everything for a transaction, for a buyer or for a seller. So today we're going to go over 2, maybe possibly 3 if there's time, workflows that we've created in order for you guys to be able to do everything at the right time, and so you look really good for your client. All right, so let's just say you have a buyer. You put together your first contract, you put together your first deal, and now you're asking yourself, okay, well, what do I do now? If I don't have anyone to guide me, this is going to be a pretty difficult situation. I know some of you agents out there, you might be at a brokerage where maybe the broker's not as involved, or you don't even know who your broker is. Maybe you have a team leader who's not there all the time or super busy. So watching this video will probably get you up to speed and probably save your deal. So what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about step 1. So step 1 is securing a buyer. So if you've already secured your buyer, that's good. We are going to not spend too much time on this step because you're going to obviously have different ways of doing that. So let's just say you secured a buyer by you doing your open houses or you guys making your calls or whatever you did. So now you've got yourself a buyer. You want to make sure that this person gets pre-qualified or it has proof of funds. So you want to make sure of that before you even start shopping around with them, okay? You don't want to waste your time and find out later this person cannot qualify. Good, so now we got that out the way. Next thing you're going to do now, as you can see here, is find the property to purchase. So obviously, how are you going to do that? There's a few steps here. Every situation is going to be different. Most of your properties are probably going to come from the MLS. Sometimes you may find some stuff off market, or you might actually procure the property yourself by making some phone calls, or if you know someone who's looking to sell, you might put the deal together that way. Okay. Next step, secure the deal for the buyer. Okay, there's a step-by-step on how to do that. You find the property for the buyer wants to make an offer on. Introduce yourself and note that you are planning on writing an offer. It's always good to build that rapport with the listing agent. If it's not your listing, always call ahead of time and just explain to that agent who you are and what your client is all about, and try to make them feel good about it. You want to build that, because just sending over a cold offer a lot of times won't even get noticed if there's multiple offers on that property. So always make sure that you do build some kind of rapport. The other thing is that you don't want to write up an offer if there's an offer already accepted. A lot of times agents won't even update that information on the MLS, so Don't find out the hard way after you spent an hour with your client writing up this offer, and then you call them back the next day or the same day and you tell them, hey, I'm sorry, but that house is under contract. They're going to say, how come you didn't tell me? How come you didn't know? So make yourself look good. Pick up the phone and make that call. Okay? All right. Next thing you may want to do is ask the agent while you have them on the phone if there's anything that you should know about that property, anything in particular that you should know before writing up this offer. Maybe the seller is not going to accept or close on a property until they find another property. Maybe the seller doesn't want to close until June of next year. Maybe the home is occupied by a tenant and not by the owner. There's a lot of things you need to know. So ask if there's anything that's particularly important about that property. All right, then next step would be to write up the offer. Okay, so we've done videos on how to prepare the offer. If you look back on either, I think it might have been week 1 or 2, we did a video on how to prepare the offer. So now since you've hopefully watched these videos in succession, you've already learned how to write up the offer. When you are writing up the offer, make sure that you include with that offer a copy of your pre-approval letter, or not a pre-qualification letter. You guys are going to learn the difference. A pre-approval letter is something that is going to certify that that person's income and assets have also been checked, and not only the credits. All right, so that person's pretty much ready to go and just missing a property, missing the collateral for that loan. Okay, next thing you want to do is make sure that you time your closing right. You don't want to say that this is going to close in 30 days and you've got a 2 or 3K finance loan. It's probably going to take 45 or 60 days. So you want to set the right expectations when you're preparing those contracts. Also, the mortgage commitment. When I first wrote up my first contract, I remember having to call my loan officer and ask him, hey, when are you going to have a commitment on this deal by? Like, I had no idea, I had no clue. So what you should definitely do is work with a loan officer that you trust and ask them, what is your timeline for getting a commitment on a regular conventional deal? What is your timeline for getting a commitment on a FHA deal or on a 2 or 3K deal? And now once you know that, you'll be able to prepare your offers much easier, okay? Next thing, you're also gonna wanna figure out how many days you're gonna need for inspections. Now this is gonna vary. If you're in a multiple offer situation, you're gonna wanna be as aggressive as possible when it comes to preparing your inspection dates, because no one's going to want to wait around for you to 14 days to do a home inspection if there's someone else who's buying it with a 5-day inspection period. So if you want to be aggressive and you can't be super aggressive on the price or maybe on the financing terms, be aggressive on everything else. Be aggressive on maybe a closing date, be aggressive on the contingency for the inspections, be aggressive on other things other than just the financing type, because you may win it because of things like that. Maybe your client is willing to take it as is. You may want to specify those things. All right, maybe your maybe your client's a contractor, and maybe that doesn't really matter to them. Okay, so just let them know. That might save your deal. All right. So once you've sent over your offer, make sure you send over your offer, your pre-approval letter, a copy of your deposit, your escrow deposit. You always want to get an escrow deposit when you're with your client. Now, whenever you're showing homes to these people, make sure you prepare them and tell them to bring in the checkbook with them. You don't want them driving around without their checkbook, because when it's time to write an offer, it's going to be a pain in the butt for you to collect that check afterwards, and then your contract is not going to match with your check date, and it's just going to become a little bit of a nightmare. So always prepare your buyers to have a checklist when they come out and see homes with you, and one of those things on that checklist is going to be your deposit, all right, their checkbook. Good. Now, if this is going to be the first time you write an offer, have a colleague review the offer for you before you send it out. There's nothing worse than sending out an offer to another agent and then getting torn apart by the other agent asking you how come you don't know how to prepare an offer. So always have it reviewed before you send it out, and then make sure that everything is signed, executed. You sign your part, and then you send that right out. Now, when you send your offer over, make sure you call them and let them know, listen, I sent you over an offer, because you'd be surprised how many people say they didn't get your email, didn't get your fax, or whatever the case may be. So you always want to make sure that you contact the agent, and don't assume that they received it. Contact them, let them know, listen, I just sent you over an offer. Can you please just check your email or check your fax and see if it's there? Good. All right, nice. Now, let's say the offer gets accepted. Now you want to get the property transaction underway. And here are some good tips on how to get that started. Obviously, first you want to do is confirm who the buyer and seller's attorneys are. You should probably know that, going into this transaction, who the attorney is going to be. If your client doesn't have an attorney, make sure you ask around your office on who is a good attorney, who is someone that's going to make the client feel comfortable, not someone who's going to scare your client into, never buying a house again. So always get that recommendations before you give anybody an attorney. Okay, then you want to confirm that all the attorneys have received a copy of the contract. You want to take this, you may want to take this into your own hands and send out a group email to everyone involved, including the other agent, both attorneys, and your office administrator, so that way the front desk would have a copy as well. Okay. Okay. Next thing, during attorney review, the buyer and the seller can cancel the contract. So this is like having a premature, for lack of a better term, a premature baby. You're really going to have to nurse this thing, day in and day out until it's out of attorney review. So always make sure that you're always contacting the seller's attorney or the buyer's attorney, it depends who you're representing, to make sure that that goes smoothly. Okay. All right, that should probably take about 3 to 5 days. Once you're out of that, you're gonna obviously conclude attorney review, but during that time period, you're gonna receive letters from both attorneys. Hopefully they're CCing you. If you're not getting any correspondence from the attorneys, make sure they add you on the email threads. Once you get those letters, make sure you keep those letters as part of your contract, because what those letters are, or riders, what they may call them, or addendums, sometimes they may call them, those are updates to the contract. So any update to the contract that it's made should be saved in your file. So if you guys aren't getting into haven't gotten into the habit of doing that, that's important, because if your file ever gets audited and they look for any addendums or riders and you don't have any, it's almost equivalent to not having the contract in your file. All right. Now, next thing we want to do is, once we're out of attorney review, make sure we get the inspection scheduled. Now, when you order an inspection, make sure the inspector is a knowledgeable inspector, first of all, but also not a deal killer. Now, we don't want inspectors who are either too friendly with the agents and they don't look out for the clients, but we also don't want superhero inspectors who would think that they're doing the client a favor by scaring them away from a property. We want somebody who's going to educate the client on how they can repair these items, or how the seller can repair these items if we get the credit, and not so much as painting it like it's the end of the world when there's a leaky faucet or something, okay? So during inspection period, always make sure you're there. Always make sure that you give the seller's agent enough time to get you in there, and don't just show up the day of the inspection and call them and say, hey, listen, by the way, we're at the home doing home inspection. That could really, really turn your deal sour. The seller's agent, not because they're so fixed on having control, but their seller is going to probably get very upset with them if they're not present at that home inspection. So yes, it has happened to me in the past where I've just shown up for a home inspection. I've used a lockbox, and I thought I was allowed to because we're under contract. Then the seller's agent finds out that we did a home inspection when we send them the report, and they're flipping their wig. So don't let that happen to you. Don't look like you're not a professional, okay? So after you've concluded this inspection period, you're gonna get the inspection sent back to you, maybe after a few days. And your job to what to do at that point will be to read over that inspection report with the seller and prepare the seller for any potential issues that are going to be asked for. If something gets noted, like maybe a faulty wiring or a bad roof, or maybe they noted there's some oil lines in the property. These are the things that you're probably going to hear about from the buyer's attorney or the seller. If you're dealing with your buyer, you're going to have to make sure that these things get addressed by the other party. So you want to go over the inspection report and ask them, what are their top concerns. Obviously, the inspection report is not a buffet, and take as much of it as you can get. It's more of a report asking your client, okay, how much of it do you necessarily need fixed? How much of it can you live with? And what things really don't matter to you. Okay, and then have them address those same concerns with their attorney, or you can go ahead and write up an email that you want your client and you have spoken, and you guys have come to the conclusion that these items are the most important, the rest are not that important, and we can live with them. So make sure that the attorney gets that correspondence, and then about a day later, your buyer's attorney will send out that information to the other party, and the negotiation process will start. Sometimes the attorneys will take forever to negotiate these things, so you may want to step in and talk to the other agent to see, you know, what you guys can kind of come up with between each other, because if you leave it to the agents, it could take weeks before you guys even come up to an agreement on what's going to be fixed and what's not going to be fixed. A good solution to a lot of problems could be a home warranty. You know, if the boiler is older and the hot water heater is older, you guys could probably solve that issue. If it's a must-have for the buyer, you can solve it with getting a home warranty, and that'll cover them in case the units break. As long as they're working while their property is sold, then that'll be covered. All right, good. Once you've made it past these, home inspection issues, then what you're going to want to do is at that point confirm that the appraisal is going to go out. You know, you also want to get an appraisal. You're going to have to get the appraisal done on the property, because the loan is not going to move and get clear to close until you have an approved value on a property. So make sure that that gets done. A lot of people like overlook this process and they forget that, you know, you need an appraisal. Then the loan officer is like, oh, I didn't know you guys concluded your inspection process. So make sure that's done. Once that's done, you're going to confirm that the mortgage is being taken care of, that the mortgage is underway. You know, they have to obviously always be in contact. Make sure your client is not always calling you for mortgage information. Make sure they're actually building a communication line with that loan officer. I can't tell you how many times loan officers try to get over on us, and they try to have us do their work because they just don't want to be bothered by the client, and they think that we're their runners. And a lot of new agents get caught up in this, and they go and collect paperwork for them. They get personal information from them, which we shouldn't be getting. So make sure that you know, your loan officer is playing their part. Okay. One thing I didn't mention here is if you're representing the buyer directly after attorney review, you guys are gonna have to bring in a second deposit if there's one on the contract. Okay, so right after attorney review, don't forget, if the contract states it, you have to have that given. And I believe it's in our checklist here, but I didn't cover it. Okay, so if the mortgage is underway, then you know that you're going to be obviously getting the confirmation dates for a lot of the things that, oh, here it is, your second deposit is due, confirm dates. Okay, so yeah, it is here. So once we've concluded our appraisal, we're going to want to confirm that the attorneys have all the escrow deposits, okay, that they've received them, because sometimes the seller's attorney is going to want to hold that money. So if we're sending it over, or if the buyer's attorney is sending it over, you might want to make sure that they have it. And sometimes you might even need to get a a letter from the attorney, an escrow letter stating that they're holding X amount of money for the lender. The lender may sometimes request that. All right, now town inspections. All right, if you are responsible for the town inspections, then you're going to have to make sure that that is being taken care of. If you, as the agent, a lot of times you may have to go there for the buyer and apply. So make sure you get those. You call the city first, and then you get those checks made out to the city. You got to find out how they're going to be cut and what inspections the town requires. Some towns require just a fire inspection. Some towns require a CO and a fire inspection. So make sure you figure out the process before you just show up to the town with a check and it's cut and completely wrong. Not all cities are the same. If the seller is responsible for the CO inspection, contact the seller's agent and make sure they have gone and done that, because I'll tell you right now, there's been a lot of times seller's agent is very busy. If they're a listing agent, they probably have a ton of listings and they forget to go. And they think maybe the seller's going to do it, and the seller thinks the agent's going to do it. So make sure that you contact them and make sure that is done. Once that's completed, then you're going to want to make sure that the home insurance has been obtained for your buyer, because your buyer's not going to be able to close on this transaction until the homeowner's insurance. There's been a lot of times that the homeowner's insurance is being purchased at the very last minute, and what that does is that it leads your client to buy a policy that may not be the best policy for them, or they could find a better deal on a policy. So try to get that done in a timely manner. Okay, now you're going to want to reach out to everyone and give them a closing date reminder. Now this is important because there's so many people that are involved in this transaction that you're going to have to kind of be the orchestrator of this whole thing. You're going to have to make sure that everyone's on the same page. That includes the mortgage company, the title company, and the attorney. Believe it or not, now, there's so many people that have to be involved in this. So make sure that they all know and start to kind of put this on their calendars. Shoot for a deadline, because there's going to be a lot of times that these contracts are going to expire. And if the contract expires, there is no guarantee that the seller may want to extend it. So make sure you guys are always within your your time, okay? During this time period, you're going to want to prepare your commission bill. Now, your commission bill is very important. Make sure you do not forget to send this in, because if you don't send in your commission bill and they forget to put you on a HUD-1, it is very difficult to get paid after that, almost impossible. Okay, the courts really don't care too much about a realtor's commission. You know, we're not really that protected, so make sure that you are getting this and you're reviewing the closing disclosure when it's prepared to make sure you're on that, okay? Next thing, you're going to want to get your buyer to start making appointments to get their utilities turned on. A lot of people find this out the hard way when they move into the property and the lights get cut off, the gas get cut off. They have no cable, they have no internet. So in order to make your yourself very valuable, a lot of people ask, you know, why do real estate agents even exist if, you know, we can do all this online? One of the things is that, you know, we have these checklists in place in order for our clients not to have to suffer without any basic utilities in their home. Okay, so always make sure you get taken care of this. Next thing is going to be the final walkthrough. Some people do 2 walkthroughs, some people just do the 1. I'm not really a big fan of doing 2, but if you must, then you can, because what happens is that you're going to want to do a walkthrough before the 3-day cool-off period, which they have after they review their HUD. So after they get the closing disclosure, they can do a walkthrough and make sure everything is good. But then anything can happen within 3 days. So if something happens to the house that wasn't the way it was when you reviewed the HUD, obviously anything can happen in 3 days. So I'm a big fan of just doing it on the closing date. So whatever the closing date is, make sure you get there nice and early or the day before, if your client feels comfortable enough to do it the day before, to do that walkthrough, and then you can see if there's anything that needs to be either cleaned up, anything that needs to be fixed, items that weren't fixed from the home inspection, make sure the water's running, anything that you need to make sure that that property is in good shape. Also, during this period, you're going to want to remember, I am a big fan of doing this at this point. When your clients are doing their walkthrough, when your clients are reviewing all their closing disclosures, this is the time for you to get your review. Don't wait to get a review from your client after the closing, because I will tell you, you guys are going to lose out on a ton of reviews. A lot of buyers do not want to review their agents after the closing because they felt something went wrong at closing. They had nothing to do with you. And for some reason, they bunch us in all together, and they start to think that we had something to do with this catastrophe that happened at closing. So just make sure you get this review when they're at their happiest. And usually, you know, after everything is scheduled, that's when they're pretty happy, they're excited, they're getting their house. Get a review right at that point, okay? Next, you're gonna wanna make sure that you attend the closing. Bring your clients a gift. That's always a good thing. You know, make sure that they understand you value their business. And while you bring them a gift, ask them if they have any other friends or family that may be looking to buy or sell a home. If you don't ask, you won't get it. So make sure you always ask them for that. One thing that I suggested to my agents is that if you can't make the closing for whatever reason, send them a gift to their job, wherever they work. The reason why you may want to do that is because if there's colleagues that are working with them and they see that they got a really nice gift, they're going to ask them, who sent you that? And if they talk to their colleagues and say, well, that's my realtor who sent me that. Oh, really? Your realtor sent you a gift? Oh, you know what? I'm looking to buy a house too. You know, and then automatically you start to get those referrals because, you know, you kind of, you know, made something interesting happen during that day of work for them. So that's a really good thing to do if you're not going to these closings, or both. You know, you can give them a closing gift at closing and then give them something, another appreciatory gift afterwards. You know, you can send it right to their job. All right, next thing, make sure that you get a copy of your HUD or closing disclosure statement. Or if you're going to go to the closing, make sure you get your commission bill. Commission check, and make sure you get that closing disclosure and bring that back to the office. If you don't have a closing disclosure, a lot of times your broker's not going to want to pay you because they want to make sure that you're on that HUD. So always make sure you get that. If you don't go to the closing, make sure that when you do talk to the title company or the attorney that's closing that, make sure they're sending you a copy of that. Now, for some reason, I'm not sure if this has been cleared up by now, but there were title companies who thought that after the Dodd-Frank Act, thought that real estate agents don't deserve a copy of the closing disclosure. And this is the craziest thing that I've ever heard. Like, there were title companies that were making us sign like the affidavit stating that, you know, we were able to get copies of a seller's of the selling disclosure, of the closing disclosure, and our sellers had this, and the sellers had to sign these documents, and it was crazy. I don't understand why they would make us do that. But now I think everything is pretty much back in line, so I haven't really seen that too often. Okay, so that's pretty much it for our buyer's transaction side. And down here you can see important information you should be getting on a transaction whenever you're in one. And here are copies of everything that you need. Here's a checklist of everything you need in your file. Okay, and you can keep notes here on your timeline. Okay, so this is a really nice thing. I'm not sure if a lot of the agents here in the office are using it or have ever used it before. This is very easily found in our Drive under workflow, and it's under our workflow and process under real estate forms. All right, so that's it for our buyer side. Now on our seller side, we're going to go through this a little bit quicker because a lot of the steps we already talked about. So I want to show you here what we have. Okay, so first of all, prepare or find, not so much prepare, we can't prepare one, but find a motivated seller. This is a really important thing to do because you don't want to just go on listing appointments just to, for the, how would I say, for practice. You want to make sure you're going out there and you're going to get someone who's really motivated. Someone tells you, yeah, I'd sell my house if I got $1 million for it. Meanwhile, the home is only worth $700,000. These are people who are probably not ready to sell yet. So find yourself a motivated seller. Then what you want to do is you want to assess the home's value. You want to make sure that you know what you're talking about. You don't want to show up to the home unprepared. You want to make sure that you know where comps are selling in that neighborhood, especially if you're not familiar with the neighborhood. There's nothing worse than showing up and then the homeowner schooling you on what the neighborhood's doing or what the values in the area are. So make sure you know this, okay? While you're there, when you go to the home, make sure that you take note of any repairs the home may still need. Okay, this is really important. And then you want to talk to your, next step would be talking to the seller. Analyze their needs and their motivation. Find out if there's a hardship or find out the timeline that they need in order to sell that property. You may want to rate your sellers' willingness from 1 to 10 and focus on the ones that are really, really motivated to sell it and try to go after that listing if they're a 5 and above, because sometimes people don't know they're motivated until you kind of like figure it out for them, because if they're stuck in this place and it's a 2-bedroom, they're about to have another second child or something, needing more room, and they're just telling you they're kind of procrastinating. Sometimes they need someone like you to tell them, look, it's okay to take the next step. There's people out there who will procrastinate a lot if you don't help them. Okay, next thing, secure the listing and make sure you get the documents you need. The basic documents you're going to need are a listing agreement, your CIS, your lead-based paint, and you want to make sure you give your client always an attorney general memorandum. There are a few other documents that we have in our Drive, such as a seller's disclosure, which is not really mandated, but nowadays more and more buyers agents are requesting it. So what I do is I always leave it with the seller to make sure that they fill it out on their own time, because this document is 8 pages long and it does ask you every aspect of the home. So make sure they know what they have to do. Have them fill it out if it's required or it's requested, and then just make sure you give it to anyone who potentially is interested in the property. Next thing you want to do is you want to list the property. You want to make sure you list the property in the appropriate MLS at the fair market value, and make sure you add a great description. A lot of agents sometimes put great property, easy to show. That's not good. If I was a seller and my agent put those remarks on there, I'd be pretty upset, because this is the biggest sale of anything in most people's lives. So you want to make sure you describe it in a way where they're going to be proud to show their friends, and you want to make sure that they are also inputting in your description. A lot of them want to have input, so make sure you talk to them and say, hey, listen, what would you want me to describe about this one? What is it important to you? That goes a long way. That means a lot to them. It's better than having a surprise later on. Okay, so next thing, accepting an offer. So a lot of offers are going to be coming in the property if it's priced right. What you want to do is you want to present all offers within 24 hours to your client. Now that doesn't mean in person. You can fax them the offer. You can email them the offer. You just have to be able to present it to them within 24 hours and have some kind of proof. If you're going to verbally present these offers to your client, make sure you follow up with a text message or an email. It has to be proof that you presented these offers to them. Okay, especially if there's an irate buyer's agent. When you get an offer, you want to check to see if there's seller concessions, because sometimes Agents only look at the first page and they don't look at the last page, or if you have like a unfamiliar contract, like a WICR contract or something. Sometimes these concessions are hidden in there, so make sure you always find if there's an extra addendum or if there's sometimes buried in all the language. So make sure you read it. Also, make sure that they provided you with a pre-approval and not a pre-qualification letter. And then the third thing is always make sure that they gave a deposit, because sometimes they will put that there's a deposit on the offer on the property, but they didn't send you a copy of the check. So always request that if it hasn't been given to you. Okay, next thing, attorney review. We spoke about this. Babysit your attorneys during this period because they are busy. You're not their only client. This shouldn't take more than 3 to 5 days. Next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you get that second deposit, especially if you're representing the seller. I've heard, I've been taking classes and to get my agent's license and my broker's license and my continuing education. I've heard a lot of situations where agents get sued from the sellers because they don't collect the second deposit, or the buyer's agent gets sued if they don't collect the second deposit. So you don't want to be one of these agents get sued because they forgot to collect the second deposit. So always make sure that these deposits are collected and transferred to whatever escrow account they need to be in, whether that's the attorneys or whether it's in the yours or whoever's escrow is supposed to be in. So make sure that's collected. Next thing, home inspection. Make sure you're there. I know that you are the seller's agent, and this is the responsibility of the buyer's agent. But don't get lazy. If you can't make it to the home inspection, send someone. It's important for the seller to have somebody there because you don't want the home inspector, making a mess of the house. You want to be able to give feedback to your seller also about things that were noted. And you don't want people just, walking around someone else's home. Like if it was my home and you have these strangers that I don't know walking through the home, that's, it's not a good feeling. They hired you because they trust you. They don't trust, these other people who they've never met in their life. So make sure you always have someone there. Okay, next thing is going to be home inspection negotiations. So this is going to be your time to shine. Now, the attorneys are not really going to care too much about the negotiations because for them it's just another deal, another process. Now, what you want to make sure is that your seller doesn't get taken to the cleaners when they get this inspection report back. So review the report with your seller, just like you would review the report with your buyer. Review it with the seller and just prepare them, because you don't want them to find out, a week after the home inspection is done that, there's a list of like 20 items that, have to be done. You want to first prepare them with the feedback from the inspector, and then you want to review with them the home inspection report before any requests are even asked for, okay? Next thing is the appraisal. Always be present for the appraisal as well. Good thing about the appraisal is that the appraiser is probably going to be in and out of that house in 10 to 15 minutes. So it's not a big consumption of your day. Bring with you a copy of the offer and some comps. Sometimes the buyer's agent doesn't bring it. So if you don't want your deals to under appraise, always make sure you bring in some good comps and you bring in the offer. Now, some appraisers won't take this information from you, and that's fine. They don't have to, but some will, and will thank you for it because it'll make their job easier. So, don't, obviously get offended if an appraiser doesn't take that from you. Then you want to talk to the buyer's agent and the lender for the buyer and see how you guys are doing with the commitment, because the commitment is going to have to be due shortly after the appraisal is done. Another thing you want to do is, if the commitment is not ready and they need more time, you have to start thinking about preparing an extension to the contract. The extension can be prepared by you or it could be prepared by the attorney. Most of the times I do it because the attorneys take too long, and as long as the attorneys approve it, it's fine. Just go ahead and do it. You can do that. It's very easy. Okay, next thing, town inspections. If you're dealing with a lot of traditional real estate, the seller is responsible for the CO. So what I like to do is I like to talk to the seller about any items right up front when I take the listing in the beginning. There could be issues for the CO. So once that's taken care of, when you do go to schedule your CO, you're not going to have any problems with the home not passing. And if you do, they're probably very minor. So collect the check from your homeowner, from the client, and go and schedule these inspections. Now, make sure you tell your client when the home inspection is, so that way they're prepared for it. If there's any alarms that need to be put up, or extinguishers that need to be put up, make sure that's done before the inspection. Now, one thing I do want to remind you guys of is that you're real estate agents, you're not handymen. So just because you schedule the CO inspection doesn't mean it's your job to put up the smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, or the extinguishers. you have to make sure that this is taken care of by the seller. And if the seller doesn't have time or they're not a handy person, then make sure you have a handyman in your team that is going to be able to go and do it for them. Okay, so that's really important. Next, get your review. Get your review from your seller. This is really important, and this is a good time to get that. After that, you're going to want to make sure with the buyer's agent that they've gotten their home inspection. They've gotten their home insurance, homeowner's insurance. Next, after that, you want to do a closing date reminder, because sometimes, you know, people get busy and they forget that, you know, this deal has to close. Make sure that utilities are scheduled to be turned off by your seller and that the buyer is scheduling them to be turned on. Then you want to review the final closing disclosure to make sure that your commission is on there and that it's not missing somewhere, you know, and then you don't get paid later on. And then also schedule the final walkthrough with the buyer and the buyer's agent. You want to make sure they do this so that way there's no surprises at closing. So make sure this is done the day before or very early in the closing day. And then you want to get paid. So attend the closing if you can, collect your commission check, bring back a copy of the HUD, closing disclosure. If you don't make it to the closing, remember, always make sure that they send it to you promptly, because this will slow down the time frame in which you will get paid. So make sure that's always taken care of. And hey, if it's your closing, congratulate your seller, ask for reviews. You know, obviously if the seller is selling their property, you might continue working with them as a buyer. So, you know, this might be a very good relationship for you to keep nurtured. So, you know, always ask them, you know, how they're feeling about the transaction, and make sure that they know that you care. You're not just there for a check. Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this training today. Let's see if we have any questions from our viewers. Let's see. Jim, it's okay if you didn't make it. Don't worry. So you guys have any questions on anything you've wondered about in the past or presently about what goes when and what do you do in a special situation? Is there any, or you too, Alejandro?
After the inspection, then ask for review.
I'm sorry?
After the inspection, ask for review.
I would ask for a review at the point when they're the happiest. All right, so it doesn't have to be written in stone. So a lot of times people are the happiest when an offer gets out of attorney review. So ask for a review at that point. You know, or maybe sometimes people are at their happiest when they know that their home overappraised. They bought a $300,000 home, but it appraised for $350,000. Ask for a review. You know, so whenever they're at their happiest, or when your seller gets an above asking offer on their home, ask for a review. You know, catch them when they're super, super excited. And also catch them when you're with them. Because there's nothing worse than being like, hey, John, can you give me a review? Yeah, sure. Where should I review you? On Zillow, please. This is my, you know, I'll send you my link. Okay, sure, I'll get to it today. You send it, and they never do it. And then you ask them again, and now it starts to get more and more awkward every time. So you don't want to, you know, do it over the phone. Try to get it done in person, you know, if you can, or do a screen share with them. You know, call them up like, hey, by any chance, you know, are you on a computer? Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm sending you this link. Can you go ahead and click on it for me? Oh, sure. All right, good. All right, walk you through the steps. Because a lot of people, you know, they don't value it as much as, you know, as we do. They don't know why, because, you know, our reputations are all based upon reviews from other people. So, yeah, that's important.
How about if the deal fell apart, you know, before the closing, and they were reviews? Is that they check, or anybody can just review this?
Well, Zillow does ask you what transaction are you reviewing them on. So they are like the gold standard. They don't just allow reviews. But you can get reviews pretty much anywhere else without so much confirmation, like on Zillow, Yelp, Google, wherever. So I would say, you know, try to get them all. You know, if you're with them, you know, spend a good 5 minutes just reviewing me on all these sites. Get as many as you can out of them. I'm sure they won't mind. If they're happy about something, they won't mind giving you, you know, 3 reviews or whatever the case may be. So, yeah. If the deal falls apart, it falls apart. You know, that doesn't mean you stop working. That means you just
you keep the review.
Yeah, I mean, you don't stop working. You keep looking for another buyer, keep looking for another property, and your deals are going to die. So, you know, keep that in mind. It's a natural thing for deals to die, especially in your first year. Your first year deals are going to die more than they ever will ever again in your career. So, you know, just because of your lack of experience and because, you know, sometimes you're working with people who you shouldn't be working with. So as you guys get better, these things will happen to you less and less. Any other questions, guys? All right, good. You guys are good? All right, well, hope you guys enjoyed this training today. If you have any questions about anything we covered today and you're seeing this video later on in the day or at another time, just send me a message, a comment, or you can find us at culture.estate. If you go to www.culture.estate, there you can learn about our company, and if you want to become a real estate agent, there's also a place for you to apply there. Let me see if we do have some things coming up in on November. Let me see what date. We have a live training with auction.com at the Westwood in Garwood. So if anyone's interested in going to that, let me give you the date of, let's see when that is. I think that is on the new, let's see, auction.com. Yeah, that's on November 15th. We're having a live auction.com, I would say, training at the Garwood. I'm not sure what to call those things, but you'll find out about how to buy distressed properties. You'll find out how to buy sheriff's sales. You'll buy pretty much any questions you have about the whole process of buying and how to use the auction.com site. So if anyone's interested in going, that's going to be November 15th at 6 p.m. at the Westwood in Garwood. If you guys need some information on that, it'll be up this week on our website as well at www.culture.estate. All right, thank you guys. Have a great day and enjoy the weekend. Hey, Elijah. It's all right, buddy. Catch the next one, brother. See you later, guys. Be good.